Hello everybody, hope you're doing well. Welcome to a boss counters video. Yes, it's not the Cavalier cheat sheet, that's coming very soon. I'm actually just finishing up some work on it. It is taking a little bit extra because it's the stupid tags. And yeah, it's just taking a bit of time. I'm going to be changing the way I'm going to be doing it. So like the Cavalier cheat sheet kind of looks like this at the moment. It's a bit of a mess. As said, I need to finish it. It's not finished yet. It's going to take another couple of hours just to check out and test some champions. Also, I want to do more kind of like an explain better way of kind of like the bosses and interactions. My write-up is in the description down below. So if you want to just quickly get to like what I suggest, go to the description. But in any case, I'm going to roll some footage. I'm also going to be talking over the top of it and as well kind of going over each individual quest because there's a lot of things to consider this month as opposed to say last month, and as well some really wonky nodes which are a thing. Oh, before I go anywhere, thanks to the community tab who put some responses as to like champions they've used, and also my good friend Fists who came up with a few suggestions. I've added all of those together with my own and you know, I've put them in the description as I said. And if you've got any other suggestions, put it in the description down below, the comment section, sorry. And yeah, it could help out another fellow summoner if I've not covered another option, because there's tons of options. There's 200 plus champions. So let's kick off with 1.1. In 1.1, first of all, the paths are Infectious Wrath. And as it says here, attackers gain indefinite passive fury, increased attack rating, blah, 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 blah. When you heal block an enemy champion. And whenever tech champion inflicts a defender with an armor break debuff, the defender is inflicted with that passive heal block. So block the healing, get a fury passive. That's how that works. Lots of different options here to take, whether or not you're doing armor break, whether or not you're suppressing the kind of the regeneration. Warlock, Sentinel, Hulkbuster, Petrify Champs if you so choose, Mysterio after the Fourth Light, Civil Warrior. Okay, that's kind of a very simple way to explain it. As I said, Cavalier cheat sheet will be out in the next 2 to 3 hours. I need to add more champions to it, but that's just kind of like explain that one. From a boss standpoint, the boss is the delightful Nebula. Now, here's the thing. Nebula-wise and champion-wise to take against this. It's got live wire. Both attackers and defenders strikes have a 25% chance, 20% chance to apply shock debuff. We've got nerves of steel, and every 10 seconds a defender gains an indefinite armor up. And Vicious Assault, while a defender has a regen buff active, they gain 60% attack rating and their attacks become unblockable. To be honest, that is the biggest thing I felt that you should be focusing on. It's kind of dealing with the regeneration side of things. Now, there are different ways to approach this. You could just say Magneto and done, red mags, whatever mags, and it's like, okay, do that, that's cool. But it depends how you see it. For me, I saw it as this needs to be suppressed regeneration buff because I don't like that. I felt the rotation for me was more of a case of suppression with the stagger debuff or nullification. So that's why Dr Doom was kind of my option here. It was my solid option to take on it. But any nullifiers that are out there, Magik, Sasquatch, Symbiote Supreme, the list goes on with available options. Anything that really kind of suppresses that buff if you don't like the unblockable aspect. But this was a very straightforward fight and just keep the champion to an SP1. Now we're into 1.2, and this is all about the Mystic Champions. I'm still unsure about the successful nature of the kind of class-based system within the tag-based system, and I'm just going to stick to the ones here, which is Dimensional Beings, Illuminati, and Thanos Army, which there are a few, and are obviously a few effective ones. I've heard stories of Corvus Glaive not working with this, and it may be that champion or maybe other champions, or the way that persistency works with them. I'm not 100% sure. I will be investigating that in a story for the MCN tomorrow. But focused on the best champions to take against this. Any kind of dimensional being that works well. I think for this one, my favorite was Mr. Fantastic, Namor, and I think there was one other. I think it was Medusa. There are a few champions that work relatively well with this, which, you know, as I said, I'm working on a Cavalier cheat sheet at the moment to kind of like get some more added to it because there have been some new additions since that particular section came up. But there's a few there. Purgatory, recent one that's been added as well. So yeah, those are the kind of like options right there. I'm not sure if it's like it's a great one, to be honest. These tags I think are a bit janky, in particular when it comes to 3.1. I'm going to touch on that in a minute. I think in some cases I was like, I'm not really sure about which one I wanted to really use, but there's a lot of champions to focus on for this. Let's focus our attention on the boss. The annoying thing is it's Magneto as a boss, and it is rich get richer, and as well combat deja vu prowess whenever the attacker lands the same type of basic attack twice in a row. The defender gains a prowess buff. Not really kind of the biggest issue. Bubble shield, I'm not a massive fan of. I do think that's kind of a bit annoying. Divine barrier, while fighting a mystic attacker, every 10 seconds on a timer, the defender becomes immune to nullify, fate cell, and stagger. So trying to suppress those effects is going to be annoying. My personal frustration, or thing I found the most annoying, was persistent pressure, which basically means that the enemy gets an unstoppable buff, and then every 15 seconds the defender gains an unstoppable buff, but it is reduced down if you as an attacker has a prowess buff. Now this is good in some ways because it does mean you can like have different options for takedown. For the paths leading up to this, yes, dimensional beings. I didn't really use any crossfights going into some of the bosses, as I just didn't feel practically that they worked against them. But okay, dealing with unstoppable, it's either a case of having Captain America Infinity War, any kind of nullify or stagger champs. Yes, it is a case that will be a problematic interaction as there. So Cap Infinity War becomes like a great solid option to take on this. Also, any champion that builds prowess, and your other options could be using Bishop, Jubilee, Professor X, Kitty Pryde, to name but a few. Those don't have hashtag metal and can be some great interactional play to suppress things like unstoppable, if that is the problem that you may have with this fight, and keep them to an SP1 for God's sakes. SP2 is not nice. So there you go, there's some options. Any of those team that could get a slow debuff or kind of have a synergy that unlocks a slow debuff could be kind of like helpful. But if you got that prowess up, it's going to mean that, you know, Bishop is going to be an absolute solid takedown for this, because he builds prowess like an absolute G, so it's going to reduce down the extent of that unstoppable. 2.1 on the agenda now, and it's Relentless Mutation and its healing factor. Now this is all about just any kind of mutant. However, though, there will be some mutants that are discernibly better than others. And one of those, or many of those, are going to be your ones I just mentioned, funnily enough. Apocalypse, which, you know, hashtag metal, so I wouldn't use that against Magneto in the previous one. Kitty Pryde, Jubilee, Professor X, Bishop, you know, there's tons that are going to be really effective, but any mutant really works for this. I've used Archangel, I've used, I think I used Colossus against this as well. It's not totally effective, but it's a case of like, it doesn't really matter which one to use. That are going to be ones that are more effective than others to take this down. Moving now on to the boss. So the final boss is Phoenix. Now I've heard a lot of horror stories about Phoenix, and in particular because it has a load of weird stuff. So I tried experimenting with some stuff early on to take the Wither debuff away from me, and Crossbones was okay, but the problem is he doesn't build those debuff effects. The problem with how this champion works, and it is very complex, is that you will have something called Buffed Up Defender. Why Kabam did this, I do not know, but, you know, Kabam do be Kabam. Defender takes 100% less damage while they have less than 3 buffs applied to them, right? So you kind of go like, okay, right, well, the enemy needs to build buffs. How do they do that? They've got Haunted. When a defender dashes back, the attacker is faltered for 3 seconds. All debuffs are then purified and converted into 100% fury buff for 10 seconds, right? So that kind of gives you the idea of that's how the enemy builds buffs, and that's how you're able to take it down with that. Forced entropy is going to be a little bit annoying because every 6 seconds the defender is inflicted with a debuff with a potency, blah 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 blah, for 10 seconds. If the attacker lands a hit, this time it is reset. So you basically have to keep up the damage. There's so many ways to kind of rotate around this, and I think that it's all about aggression and debuffs. So you could go down the route of something like Nick Fury, get to the second phase, get loads of special attacks thrown off SP1s, get yourself up to the unblockable state of your tactical charges, and be very aggressive against the wall. That could be an option. But there are some other options that are a little bit better for this, okay? So for this, you could use the following. You could use Magik, and Spider-Man 2099. And that comes in from Fizz, who said about that. I personally use Nick Fury and Black Widow Clairvoyant. I did find that Nick Fury actually was a little bit better because of the extent of debuffs I was able to put on the enemy and build debuffs. But just choose a champion that builds debuffs quickly on an enemy. As I said, Spider-Man 2099 is something that I'll probably go back and give a go, to be honest, because I do think that's quite good. I've tried a few of them. I just kind of feel that may be the better option. There could be some debuff shruggers that could help out with that Wither, but as long as you keep aggression up against the enemy, you should be fine. Anything that's got unblockable in its makeup and its throwing of attacks, could even use the likes of Wolverine, Weapon X, for example. That could be another option which I didn't consider. So yeah, lots of options there to take that down. 2.2 time. 2.2 is a bit fun. I actually enjoy 2.2 the most, and I think I'm going to do a separate video. Scarlet Witch OG. You know, I do like my Scarlet Witch. So we've got punishing specials, but mainly we've got powerful objection. This is all about utilizing champions that are hashtag New Avengers, A-Force, and Fantastic Four, which there are loads. Again, just to kind of reiterate, I will be like releasing the Cavalier cheat sheet as soon as possible, but I need to add some more champions to it. A-Force wise, there's She-Hulk, there's Cap Marvel movie, there's Rogue, Scarlet Witch, there's New Avengers, there's Miles Morales, Hyperion, Squirrel Girl, there's Mr. Fantastic, Thing, Invisible Woman, and there's also others, Archangel, like blocks, healings and stuff. There's so many to kind of like deal with that, but don't normally, those last ones don't play into the hashtags. But this is all about cosmic champions to kind of like work into this, and I'm choosing for those rather than some of the class specific ones, because I just kind of feel like some of them aren't working properly and other stuff. But yeah, that's really on that. Moving now on to the boss, we've got Apocalypse. Apocalypse is actually a little bit annoying, more so because it's got all these other things. So it's got immovable object. Every 5 hits in the attacker's combo meter creates 1 steadfast buff, allowing them to block 1 unblockable hit each steadfast. I mean, that's good, but I don't think that's kind of like one of the main things about this particular fight from how I've been playing it. Empowered immunity, which is whenever this champion would receive a debuff they are immune to, they generate 33% of bar power, so look for that. And as well, like, powerful, the defender is immune to all forms of power manipulation. So all the champions you may be like, oh, I'll use this one. Yeah, it don't work like that, unfortunately. And I was like, oh, I'll use Dr. Doom and do a method that I used to use in taking a champion down. No, not going to happen. We've got Quick Spark, which is if the defender is not attacked within 6 seconds, the attacker receives an incinerate debuff, dealing 5% of defender base attack over 6 seconds. Kind of annoying. And also, Apocalypse treats the attacking heroes as mutants for his ability. So it's like going, oh, do I choose a villain champion that's able to be incinerate immune, depending on how I want to play the fight, but also just deal with the fact of like it's just going to be annoying. And that was kind of like my kind of thought process and mentality around it. But there are some like options to take this down. And I personally found great fun with using Human Torch, and also there was Black Widow Clairvoyant if you switch the mode to being the third curse, which is the Incinerate immunity. Depending on how you go, debuff shruggers could be a good option, like Crossbones, but I don't really want to go class disadvantage with it. King Groot, found a little bit of fun with that for a time, especially kind of like, you know, depending how the fight goes. You've got that regen to kind of like prop you up if things go wrong. But I know that Fizz used Guardian and found that very effective. So Guardian, there's a class advantage. And anything that's able to kind of like do a bit of damage here that's class advantage could be a little bit better, and as well maybe a non-hero version of champions to take this down. 3.1 time, and I must admit this has probably been one of the worst made nodes I can imagine. Like I've seen. So December, I gave some feedback to Kabam about this, and they didn't take it into consideration. They didn't deal with it, right? And that is Furious Feint and Sidestep Strike. It's all about Spider-Verse champions, so Symbiote, Spider-Verse, and Sinister Six. Why is it a bad node, you might ask? Well, it's just about the jolt, okay? So when you play this out, you have to knock down the enemy. As soon as you knock down the enemy, you will get an evade passive. This means that when the enemy is coming towards you and it's unblockable, which it goes unblockable, you kind of you can go for like a parry into it, and it goes into a passive stun, which allows you to kind of like hit into the enemy and kind of keep up the pressure. The biggest problem with it is the evade jolt you get after doing that stun puts you at a greater distance away. This means you can't repeat something like do another heavy, like go from going parry, heavy, because your distance is taken away, and as well the length of time of coming back in for 0.9 seconds. Sometimes the champions you're using do not have that kind of rotation or high speed rotation of hitting in that. It's basically just looking at the movement mechanic as a result. And it is kind of like, it's just very annoying from a play out perspective. In any case, loads of champions available to take this down. So you got Red Goblin, Venom, Venompool, Venom the Duck, Symbiote Supreme. There's loads. Spider-Man 2099 from the Spider-Verse, Spider-Ham, Stark Spidey. Sinister Six, you've got Electro Rhino, you've got Green Goblin, although I don't think a lot of people are going to use that, but at least you've got Craven and you've got Vultures, and there's great kind of like options to take that down. So there is kind of like plenty with that. When it comes to the boss, Omega Sentinel, I actually quite like this. Omega Sentinel and most of the bosses I've actually liked. The paths, I think, are just kind of a bit meh, especially with some of the champions they've chosen to go onto them. So you've got Hang In There, whenever the defender is knocked down, a 12-second timer is started. Hot and Bothered, which is defensibility accuracy. Right Back at It, when the defender is knocked down by heavy attack, special attack, they become debuff immune for 6 seconds. And Agile Reversal, which is the attacker starts the fight with 6 light charges, 6 medium charges, blah blah blah. Attacker lands corresponding attacks and all charges are reset. When the attacker lands a special attack, they when any charge reaches 0, the defender reduces the duration of stuns by 20%. Now, what I decided with this is to use the Guardian pre-fight with White Magneto with Medusa. I found that I was able to kind of keep up a lot of pressure. The biggest thing when it comes to this champion is suppressing the armor. Once the champion gets armored, it becomes auto-blocked. It can auto-block. And there's loads of champions to take this down. So, options-wise, and as said in the description, is information. But we've got to take this down the likes of Medusa, Terex, Dr. Doom, with Mr. Fantastic, by the way. Auto-block counters with True Sense, True Strike, and True Accuracy champs. You've got Mole Man, you've got Hercules, Corvus with the Proximus Energy, not Magneto, sadly. Odin with the SP1, Angela Awakened, and then we've got things like Falcon, Cull Obsidian, so many more champions. I've put a link in the description to Unofficial Cav Mike's video breaking this down, because I think he does a fantastic job doing it, but those are just some champion suggestions in order to do it. But yeah, check out the description for the write-up of this. And yeah, it just depends on what you don't like about it. Like for me, there was 2 things I had to focus on. Maybe 3. The first thing was the armor up and trying to suppress that, so armor break champions. The second thing was trying to keep up the aggression, which is then dealing with right back at you when it becomes debuff immune, because it's not immune to the passive stun. That's kind of like, or the passive parry. That's what it's like, you know, you can interact with. Agile Reversal, I didn't really have any kind of issues with, but if I did have any kind of issues with it, it's just a case of like doing some intercept and keeping the champion to an SP1 and just keep it like that. And finally, 3.1, which is all about your skill champions. Going back to an old favourite of mine, which is Mindful Eye and Skillful Distraction and Mixed Master. This is all about either having evade counters, so you don't have to have like, you know, quintessential skill champions. It just means if you use the likes of Black Widow, Deadly Origin, Black Panther OG, Falcon, Mole Man, Nick Fury, you know, you can deal with the situations of evade and also at the same time output a load of damage with the passive Furies that you get. The boss of this is Captain Britain. And I would say actually this is a pretty straightforward fight. It's actually pretty fun. There's so many options to take this down. Essentially, you are going to deal with the champion in a buff suppression light. The champion builds buffs and is more potent, so if you suppress the buffs, it can't be that potent. Dr. Doom, Black Widow, Clairvoyant, Morningstar, Magik, Apocalypse, Archangel, loads of champions to take this down. As soon as you knock down the champion, it's important because you get a power sting on you. So we've got special burst lockdown. Whenever the defender activates a special attack, the attack is afflicted with both a heal block and an armor break. Nothing to worry about really, apart from the purifying it and how that means for the champion. Each time the attacker knocks the defender down, they purify all debuffs on themselves. Fine. Each time the defender gains a prowess, they gain a non-stacking passive impact charge, granting 60% block penetration. Didn't need to worry about that. One too many hits. When the defender gains a bar of power, the attacker is inflicted with a power sting. But it's removed if the attacker activates a special attack, dealing direct damage equal to 50%. And I think it was just a case of like, just kind of like as soon as I was knocking down the enemy, it was just fine. And then I would throw an SP1 or something now and again. Special delivery, the attacker begins the fight. I mean, as we know, if you have to, within 15 combo hits, do a special attack and stuff like that. So, yeah, that's really it. It's not too bad. I would say the hashtag ones do ruin it a bit, and it is what it is. I probably will, after this, just focus on my Act 7.300% rather than this, just because like it's interesting. It's just a bit kind of this month. Don't know why. Just kind of feels like that. But it is what it is. What are your thoughts on this? And make sure to kind of like check out later on. I will drop the Cavalier cheat sheet, as I said, right up in the description. And I'm just working on it. The sad thing about it is just it's taking a bit more time. And also I want to do the boss breakdowns in a bit more kind of better written sense, and kind of like fully break down counters and stuff like that. So it is coming. It will be with you in the next 2 to 3 hours. Just give me a bit of time just to finish it off and touch up and stuff like that. But yeah, check out some other content which will be located on screen right now, and I'll see you in the next video. Tatty byes everybody. Bye bye.